Can I know the location of your emergency?
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
In the stillness of a chilly November morning in 2022, the small college town of Moscow, Idaho, was jolted awake by a crime so chilling it seemed ripped from the pages of a thriller novel. Nestled in the rolling hills of the Pacific Northwest, Moscow had always been the kind of place where front doors were left unlocked, and students roamed the streets freely until that dark night. Four University of Idaho students, Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Zana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin, were found lifeless in an off-campus home they shared. The scene was disturbing. Authorities would later call it one of the most complex and emotionally charged investigations they had ever faced. The victims, all young and full of promise, were targeted in what officials described as a targeted attack, using a sharp-edged weapon, likely a knife, though no weapon was initially found. The discovery rocked the entire state of Idaho, and soon the nation. The case drew attention not just because of its brutality, but because of the mystery surrounding it. No signs of forced entry, no immediate suspects, no clear motive. The small-town police, overwhelmed, were joined by the FBI and state investigators. Every clue, no matter how small, was examined. Cell phone data, surveillance footage, and even DNA found at the crime scene began to piece together a disturbing story. As the days turned into weeks, public pressure mounted. Candlelight vigils were held. Social media exploded with theories, assumptions, and wild speculation. The victims became symbols of innocence lost, of safety shattered. And then, nearly 7 weeks after the attack, an arrest was made. 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger, a PhD student in criminology at Washington State University, just a short drive from Moscow, was taken into custody in Pennsylvania, thousands of miles away. It was an arrest that shocked everyone, especially those who had interacted with him. A man studying the criminal mind was now accused of committing a gruesome act himself. But how did Kohberger come under suspicion? What evidence pointed to him? And what connection, if any, did he have to the victims? This was only the beginning of a long and twisted investigation.
Accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students, no longer at the Monroe County Correctional Facility. He's now...
When the name Bryan Kohberger was announced, a wave of confusion and disbelief spread across the country. Who was this man accused of such a horrifying act? A PhD student with no prior criminal record, studying the psychology of criminals. The irony was almost too surreal. Born in 1994 and raised in Pennsylvania, Bryan was described by classmates as intelligent but socially distant. He was reportedly bullied in high school and had struggled with issues related to mental health and identity. Over the years, Bryan developed an intense interest in criminal behavior, particularly how criminals think and act, something that would later disturb many. He studied psychology at DeSales University, earning his master's degree with a thesis that would later raise eyebrows. A survey aimed at understanding how criminals feel during and after committing crimes. The questions were chilling, asking participants to describe their emotions before, during, and after offenses. At the time, it was seen as academic curiosity. Now, some would see it as a window into something much darker. By the time he began his PhD at Washington State University in Pullman, Kohberger was deeply immersed in criminology. Just a few miles from the University of Idaho, he was living close to the victims, possibly even watching them. According to police, cell phone data showed his phone had pinged near the victim's house multiple times in the weeks leading up to the incident, even in the early morning hours, suggesting premeditation. Perhaps the most chilling part of the investigation came with the discovery of DNA evidence on a knife sheath left at the crime scene. The sheath, believed to belong to the weapon used in the attack, was matched through forensic genealogy, using a discarded sample from Kohberger's father to confirm a connection. Authorities also traced a white Hyundai Elantra, seen on surveillance footage near the crime scene on the night of the murders, back to Kohberger. The car's movements, captured on multiple cameras, painted a suspicious picture. The timeline matched up too closely to be coincidence. His arrest on December 30th, 2022, came as he visited his family for the holidays in Pennsylvania. A heavily armed SWAT team moved in. Kohberger remained calm, offering no resistance. Investigators seized multiple items from the home, including electronics, gloves, and personal journals, hoping to find more clues or even a possible motive. Back in Idaho, the community finally had a name, but the shock didn't fade. A man who had studied the minds of killers was now accused of being one. He maintained his innocence and waived extradition, allowing authorities to bring him back to Idaho to face charges. But one question still loomed large. Why? Was it an academic obsession gone too far? A desire to feel what he had only read about in books? Or was it something else entirely, a darkness that no textbook could ever explain? As Bryan Kohberger was flown back to Idaho under tight security, the world watched in suspense. The man accused of one of the most chilling crimes in recent American history had now become the central figure in a trial that would grip the nation. Cameras followed every move. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Social media buzzed with speculations, theories, and outrage. Upon arrival in Idaho, Kohberger faced a judge in his first court appearance. Dressed in an orange jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists and ankles, he stood silently as the charges were read aloud: 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. The judge denied bail. The courtroom was packed. Family members of the victims were present, their faces etched with grief and anticipation. Each motion, each word from the attorneys, was dissected by legal analysts across the country. The state of Idaho was preparing for a capital case. Prosecutors made it clear they would seek the death penalty, given the heinous nature of the crime. For them, the evidence was overwhelming. DNA on the knife sheath, cell phone tracking placing Kohberger near the scene multiple times, the white Hyundai Elantra matching surveillance footage, and suspicious behavior following the incident, including alleged attempts to change license plates and clean out the vehicle. But the defense pushed back. Kohberger's legal team argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that he had no direct ties to the victims, and that the public and media had already painted him guilty before a fair trial could even begin. They requested more time to review the mountain of evidence and asked for parts of the trial to be sealed to ensure a fair process. As hearings continued, a key battle emerged over the gag order placed on the case, a move by the court to restrict lawyers and investigators from speaking publicly. The decision divided the public. Some believed it was necessary to protect the integrity of the trial, while others, including many media outlets, claimed it was a violation of press freedom. The gag order became part of a larger debate about transparency and public interest. News organizations filed lawsuits. Families of the victims expressed frustration at the slow pace of justice, yet also feared a mistrial if media interference spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, public fascination with the case deepened. True crime podcasts broke down every court filing. YouTube creators gained millions of views speculating on Kohberger's psychology, his mannerisms in court, and his possible motive. Reddit threads exploded with timelines, theories, and sleuthing, some helpful, some harmful. And yet in the center of it all sat Bryan Kohberger, silent, emotionless, and unwavering in his claim of innocence. Despite the noise outside, the wheels of justice turned slowly. Court dates were postponed. The legal process stretched over months. The prosecution worked meticulously, gathering expert witnesses, forensic reports, and digital evidence. The defense team countered with motions to suppress certain findings, arguing over the legitimacy of how DNA was obtained and whether Kohberger's rights were violated during his arrest. Behind the scenes, the families of the victims endured the unbearable weight of waiting, each court date a reminder of what they had lost. Photographs of the smiling young students were held up during vigils, their faces reminders of lives stolen far too soon. The courtroom became a battleground, not just for justice, but for truth. And still, the most haunting question of all remained unanswered. Why did Bryan Kohberger, a man seemingly on a path toward academic success, become the central figure in a case that tore through the heart of a peaceful college town? As the case against Bryan Kohberger moved toward trial, the world's eyes remained fixed on every development. Prosecutors worked tirelessly to build a narrative of guilt backed by science, digital evidence, and psychological profiling. But still, one critical element remained murky: the motive. Why? What could have driven a seemingly intelligent and educated man, a criminology PhD student, to commit such an act? Prosecutors remained careful not to speculate too far ahead in court, but outside the legal walls, experts and the public alike offered several theories. Some believed the crime was a thrill kill, an attempt to experience the very thing Kohberger had spent years studying. Was it an obsession with control, a dark academic curiosity? Could he have believed he could commit the perfect murder and evade detection? Others speculated about rejection, possibly personal, possibly romantic. Internet sleuths uncovered rumors of Kohberger messaging one of the victims on Instagram prior to the crime, but no solid evidence confirmed any two-way interaction. Then came the psychological profiles. Experts noted signs of narcissism, obsessive behavior, and a lack of empathy. People who knew Kohberger described him as socially awkward, sometimes arrogant, and often intensely focused on crime and punishment. A man fascinated by evil, yet detached from its consequences. Still, none of these theories were definitive. The defense maintained his innocence and pointed to what they claimed were gaps in the prosecution's story: no eyewitnesses, no direct link to the victims, and possible issues with the way digital and DNA evidence was collected. As pre-trial motions continued, one thing became clear: the case would likely stretch into 2025 and beyond. A formal trial date remained pending as of mid-2025, and the defense hinted they would challenge every piece of evidence. Legal experts predicted a long, emotional, and complex courtroom battle. Outside the courthouse, life struggled to return to normal. The victims' families continued to speak publicly, pushing for justice, honoring the memories of their children, and demanding transparency. In their grief, they found purpose creating scholarships, foundations, and awareness campaigns in the names of Kaylee, Madison, Zana, and Ethan. For the town of Moscow, the tragedy left an indelible mark. Security was tightened. University policies were updated. A community once defined by peace now lived with the scars of fear and loss. And for the true crime world, the Bryan Kohberger case became a landmark, a story where fact clashed with fiction and justice collided with obsession. As we wait for the final verdict, the story continues to unfold. More court documents are unsealed. New evidence may emerge. More hearings will be held. And eventually, a jury will be asked to make an unthinkable decision. Is Bryan Kohberger guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? If so, will he face life in prison or death row? And if not, what then?